welcome to the Sheroic podcast. I'm Cassey.
And I'm Lisa.
And we are here with the one and only, the host of the School of Greatness, Lewis Howes. Okay, I need
first male guest.
First male
Excited.
guest. Very special. And for those of you who don't know who Lewis is, well, you should. He runs one of the biggest and most successful podcasts in podcast land. And it inspires people in so many different ways, not only on how to follow your dreams and your careers, but also relationships and just finding the best potential in who you are. And you recently were on Ellen twice, and this is something that you wanted so badly in your dreams, and you manifested your own reality. I mean, you are a complete inspiration, Lewis.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here.
I'm
appreciate you
excited
guys.
too. So, Lewis, obviously being our first male guest on a podcast called the Sheroic Podcast, we here are interested in understanding men better.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm interested in understanding myself better too.
Okay, cool. So you actually just wrote a book called The Mask of Masculinity.
Yep.
Can you tell us what that's about?
You know, it's about a journey that I've been going on my whole life of discovering what it means to be a man and how to be a better man. I think I grew up with two older sisters who would always tell me when they would come back from their dates that went wrong, what I shouldn't be doing as a man, right? They were kind of training me as a child to be a better man as an adult. And I probably failed them many, many times in all of my relationships with men, women, whatever.
So what were these things that your sisters were telling you?
I think it just always came down to being a good human being. Being honest, being open, being vulnerable when the moment was right. And treating other people with high level of respect and service. And I think that's what it comes down to. Like, you know, for me, the journey has been over the last few years of really discovering I was really angry for a lot of times. I was angry, resentful, resentment, and just frustrated. I was quick to be triggered and reactive. Like I needed to defend myself. If someone said something to me that I didn't like, if someone I felt like was attacking me in any way, physically or emotionally or mentally or calling me out on things, I felt like I needed to prove my manhood to them in ways that were not usually that effective or good.
Like?
I think just like screaming at them, yelling, calling them a name back, reacting in a negative way, being, you know, letting my ego get the best of me, fighting, you know, I got in a lot of fights, and just realizing like, I started to ask myself, why am I reacting this way? Why am I acting like a child? You know, when someone would say something to me, or in sports when they would hit me in a certain way or whatever, why would I react? I just didn't understand why I was always that way. And this was about 4 years ago. I was on the basketball courts in West Hollywood, and I got in a really bad fight. A point where, I don't know if you knew this.
No, tell me.
Got in a really bad fight. We were in a basketball game, a very heated game on the hard courts in West Hollywood, where these games mean nothing, right? There's nothing at stake. Except for like pride of like winning a game on the basketball court. And I was battling this one guy. We were guarding each other and kind of just going back and forth, like kind of fouling pretty hard the whole game, but both ways. And I'm fine with hard fouls or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's part of the game. And it got down to the last point, game point, and we were kind of going back and forth the whole game. Game point, next point wins. And he has the ball and he's going up to score, and so I foul him hard so he won't score. I hit him on his arm and like knock the ball out, right?
Okay.
And he starts to get really upset and starts screaming at me. And I'm like, dude, whatever, it's just a hard foul. Like, it's part of the game. And so he headbutts me. He comes to my face and headbutts me.
Wait, like for real?
Like for real,
like he puts his head on your head?
Yes. Like full on like karate, like headbutt or something, right?
What?
Exactly. That was my reaction. So my initial ego just came out, and I lost it. I was like a cage fighter. Put him in a headlock, like just knock him in the head.
Whoa.
Kicking him, kneeing him, taking him to the ground, just like full on top of him, pummeling him in the ground, right? And then I get up, and I realize, I look at his face, and there's blood everywhere, and there's a huge like gash on his forehead. And I'm like, what did I just do? You know, why? First off, what did I do? I could go to jail, like, for doing this, which there's a police department right across the street. So I'm like, what is wrong with me? This is a stupid basketball game. I shouldn't get in a fight over anything, even if someone does hit me. Secondly, why am I so quick to be triggered? And I was getting triggered for like 6 months more and more. Like any little situation in business or online or relationships, or I was like quick to be triggered. And this was kind of the culmination of events where I like just lost it. And I remember just running home up to my condo off Doheny and looking in the mirror and just being like shaking, being like, who are you? Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And that was kind of the start of this discovery about 4.5 years ago, where I was just like, I need to do some deeper work. I need to understand why I'm acting this way. I need to understand what's triggering me, what I haven't let go of, what I need to heal, whatever it is, I need to figure it out. So I started to do some one-on-one work with coaches, some deeper kind of like emotional intelligence workshops, trainings that helped me face all of my biggest fears and showed me right in front of myself how I was acting, what was serving me, what wasn't serving me, and how I could move into being a better human being, not just a man. And that was really the start of this journey in the book, where I was like, man, there's so many men like me who grew up in sports that are conditioned to react in a certain way. Conditioned, at least my experience of guys in the U.S., I'll speak for our experience. A lot of these guys that I grew up with, I played on multiple different teams in multiple different cities and states and different sports. So many guys were conditioned to be so competitive and be so manly and prove yourself in sports. And a lot of these coaches, not all of them, but some of them are just so negative in their language, in their energy of how they coach. And when that just is happening 2 hours a day and they're telling you, you don't feel the pain, don't feel this, like just get up and prove yourself that you're a man, whatever it is and how it will work. It's hard to just switch off the light switch after practice and be like this vulnerable, open, like loving human that can just connect with people. It's challenging. It takes a lot of work and a different skill set. And so I think I had these sisters that would kind of train and condition me with this like vulnerability growing up. But then I'd go into the sports teams and the coaches were like, no, don't be a pussy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that here.
No, that's okay.
Don't be these different words, right? And don't cry, don't show emotion. You can't win at that point. So
because they saw that as a weakness.
Yeah, of course. Well, in sports, if you're being soft, how are you going to win, right? That was the mindset. And so I always had these conflicting things. Like I wanted to show emotion because I would see my sisters. Actually, my dad was a very vulnerable man too. He would cry in movies and like express himself. But I was like conditioned through like wanting to just be accepted by like my peers and friends who called you worse names than coaches, right? And if you didn't do things that they thought were cool, then you were this other word. And so it's just like you always had to prove your manhood to other men or to coaches that you were man enough. And I think that stays with some men growing up. When men turn into boys, it kind of stays with them. Am I being man enough in this situation? Am I being man enough in my relationship, in my career, my business, in my health, whatever? Am I being man enough? And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think women are ever asked if they're woman enough. You're just a woman. You're just like...
I'm going to push back on that a little. It's, are you nurturing enough?
Ooh, okay.
Right? It's like if you don't want children or if you're not going to be a housewife, then you're not nurturing enough. You're not supportive. Yeah, like that's, at least for me, that's the reflection of our version.
But does anyone ever say
they don't
you're
use
not
that
a woman?
Word. No.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's like you're not a man if you're not man enough.
Yeah.
It's like you're still a boy.
Yeah.
And do women, is there ever a moment where you're like, oh, I'm not a real woman?
I have heard that about people who don't want kids, and that was a big thing for me to admit that I didn't want children because I so feared women reflecting back saying, well, you're not then a real woman. And maybe they didn't use that exact word, but it was like, oh, okay. It was still that very...
Once you become a mom, then you're like the woman, right? You're
exactly.
Like a real woman
you're
at that point.
Nurturer. That's what women are supposed to do.
But I think I guess I'm relating more towards like teens.
Right. Yes. You never said that as a teen. At least I wasn't.
No, I think the only time gender in that case, in terms of using the word man or boy or woman or girl, is just saying like, are you girly or not
Yes.
girly?
Oh, that's
that sort of
actually,
thing.
yeah.
But it's
Do you never
not
question if you're a woman or not?
Yeah.
not that I have experienced, but when I don't act like a woman, then I'm called out for acting like a man. Like when I was
yes,
younger,
yes.
and I'm usually like the leader in my group or something like that, or like running for a class treasurer or something like that. Then people are like, "Well, you're bossy." Whereas like if a guy did the same thing that I did, he'd be a visionary, he'd be a leader. So there's like a box that people want to see women fit into,
Right.
even at a young age as a
course.
girl.
Yeah.
And I like sports as well, and I was called a tomboy.
Yeah.
Well, why am I a tomboy? Why am I a sporty girl?
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Sporty Spice.
Sporty Spice.
I'm actually a bit old, so sadly she wasn't around
Oh, right.
when I was younger. But I could have called myself that.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the story, I mean, I feel like I just wanted to do, I wanted to go on my own journey to see like what was, again, supporting me in my life and what wasn't supporting me in feeling better and having deeper relationships and in not being so triggered to react in situations because I was so reactive for a lot of my life. Now I was still like a joyful, loving, like giving human. I was like always happy unless I was triggered. So it's just like, okay, this part of my life doesn't work for me. How can I grow up, grow out of this, improve, whatever it was? But I first needed to realize like the root, the cause of why I was triggered.
And are you comfortable sharing with us what
triggered
you?
Yeah, everything. My entire childhood, I was raped when I was 5 by a man that I didn't know. My brother went to prison when I was 8 for 4.5 years. So during that time, predominantly white, middle-class, suburban neighborhood, no one else had anyone in their family that went to prison. So I didn't have friends for 4.5 years, essentially, because none of the parents would allow their kids to spend time with a convict's brother.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't have friends from 8 to 12, essentially.
And those are key development years.
I was always alone and always felt like not good enough, like not accepted. I was also like tall. I was this tall when I was like 12. So I was super skinny and gangly and just
And for
goofy
people
looking.
who are listening to this on the podcast, how tall are you?
6'4". Yeah, 6'4".
He's really
So
tall.
I was just tall. I mean, I was just like, but I was like 110 pounds, then. I was just like skinny and like goofy and just uncoordinated and just, I was, I was always in the bottom of my class in school and just had like challenges reading and learning. So I just had all these different insecurities personally as like a kid. I was just insecure. And I was the youngest of 4. My siblings were off doing their thing. And I was just kind of like, felt like I was always alone. And so just a combination of events led me to be, upset, I think. All these things combined. And there's other things. My parents were not perfect. And there was always arguments in the house. But I think it was just like, I always felt alone. I didn't feel like anyone understood me. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. I'm sure you guys both felt alone at one time and felt like no one understood you. I think anyone listening can say, I felt alone at one point and no one understands me or understood me.
It's so universal.
So universal,
Yeah.
So, I felt that and but I really didn't have any friends. So for me, it was like, here's a story that not many people know. When I was like, I want to say I was like 7 or 8. It was early, kindergarten or first grade. I was trying to find some friends. And a lot of kids were like in the neighborhood playing like roller hockey or just on bikes or whatever, skateboards. And I remember seeing these 2 kids and they were like, we're starting a club. And there's 2 ways to get in the club.
Okay.
You can either answer a question right or pay money
Oh, my God.
to like join this club. And it was just 2 of them, right? And it was like in
Alright.
their like parents' basement or something, right?
Okay.
And this is how sad my life was. So they're like, okay. I was like, well, I don't have any money, so what's the question, right?
Okay.
And the question was something, it was about like name someone who's an astronaut or something. And I didn't know anyone who was an astronaut. I didn't know their names. So I was like, I don't know. There was another question, I can't remember what it was. And they're like, okay, you have to pay. So I literally walked home and like said to my mom, like, can I have $5 to join this club? And then she got like a bunch of quarters together for me. I take it back in a box and I'm like, here's the money to join the club. And then I remember just feeling so pathetic. I was like, I never went back after that day, I never went back. And I was just like, I'll cut my losses. But I was like, I was that pathetic. I had to pay to have friends at that young age. So I think it was just like a lot of situations where I was just like, okay, I need to prove myself.
Right.
I felt like, I remember in 4th grade getting picked last on a dodgeball team. Like there was 2 captains in my team or on our class. And they picked all the guys first, and then they picked all the girls second, and then they picked me after all the girls.
Oh, no.
And I was like in 4th grade at this time.
Yeah.
So I remember being like, I'm going to destroy everyone on this team that we're playing against, right? I was just like, I'm going to show them why they should have chose me, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like from there on, I was just like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. Like, I'm going to train myself to be like the strongest human being, the fastest, like the most athletic.
Yeah.
So that these things just don't happen to me anymore. So I was just so committed to never having to feel that way that I just went to the gym every day for like 6 hours and played basketball, sports. And just like, I'm going to prove all these kids wrong. That was like my mindset for literally probably close to like 20 years, where it was like, I'm going to prove people wrong in general. Like anyone. Even when I like got to the high school and college, it wasn't about like proving those like 2nd grade kids wrong. But it was still my come from. It was like my energy was like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong, you know? And even though I was still in it for the game and I loved it and it was like fun and I was all about teamwork, but it was like in the back of my head, if anyone steps to me, it's like they're stepping to my manhood or something.
Interesting.
And if I lose, then I'm not good enough and I'm not going to have friends.
And
so
that was the risk.
And if I don't achieve,
prove yourself within whether you succeeded or
exactly. And if I don't achieve, then I'm not good enough and I'm not going to have friends anymore.
Right.
So it was kind of like my fears until I hit 30 and I got in this fight. When I was 30, I got in this fight on the basketball court. And that's when I just reevaluated. I was like, why am I trying to prove everyone wrong in the world still? Like, I've made a ton of money. I've achieved all these things. Like, I've got solid relationships. I'm healthy. What am I still proving?
And do you think you're proving to yourself at this point? Is that what you were searching for?
I don't know. I think I was just like, no, at that point, I was still trying to prove everyone wrong. Like, I was worthy enough. Like, I was man enough. I was worthy enough. I was successful enough. Smart enough, whatever. And I realized, like, okay, yes, I was achieving everything that I wanted, but it was never happy. Like, it was never fulfilled when I achieved it. It was just never enough. It was like I was almost the most depressed when I would achieve the big goals.
And I hear that from a lot of celebrities. Like,
really?
they end up, you see it. Like, sometimes celebrities end up committing suicide because they've lost everything that they had, their influence or whatever. And you see people getting on drug overdoses and things like that, or being so on top that you feel so lonely because there's no one that you can actually talk to. Because the interesting thing about being a celeb, not from my experience really, but like from seeing from the outside, it seems like it's a different type of jail. It's a jail where everyone's looking in on you and you can't really escape because you're constantly in jail unless you surround yourself with similar people for friends and things like that. Wow. So you felt the most unhappy probably
when I achieved.
at one of your highest points.
Yes.
So how did you battle that?
Well, that's when so, you know, it was like a 2-year discovery of doing all this. And I felt like I was getting some insights and awareness of myself until I launched my last book. And I remember just again, I hit the New York Times bestseller list and I was like, the next day I was just like so depressed. And I was like, what is wrong with me? I thought I'd figure this stuff out.
And by the way, hitting the New York Times bestseller list is extremely hard. So that's a big deal.
But it was like it was like 8 years of like, I had a vision to launch a book 8 years prior to that. I was like, I read this book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I closed the book and I read it in 3 days, which for me was really fast. And I closed the book, and right when I was done, this was over Christmas break, 2008 Christmas break, or 2007 going into 2008. It was the only gift I got for Christmas was this book. And I remember closing it and saying, one day I'm going to meet this guy, Tim Ferriss. I never heard of him before. I was like, I'm going to meet him. I'm going to become friends with him. I'm also going to, whoever his agent is for this book, he's going to be my agent. And I'm going to write a book that's a New York Times bestseller that inspires people all over the world. I remember making this declaration in Christmas 2007. And so when it happened in 2015 or 14, whenever it was, I remember just like there's so much energy and over 8 years or whatever it was coming together. It was like so exciting, but then it was just like so depressing because I still was doing all these things to prove people wrong. Like I wanted to hit that to prove everyone that I went to high school with and elementary school with and the tutors that tutored me that like I was smart enough. Like I was worthy enough.
And hitting the New York Times bestseller list wasn't enough for you? You didn't think that would impress
I thought it would
people?
be enough. I thought it would be enough.
Do you think it's because you did it for them and not for yourself?
Well, I think it's because I was doing it to prove people wrong as opposed to lifting others up.
Yeah.
And that's when everything shifted for me. When I realized like everything in my life was, again, not everything. I don't want to say everything because I did things because I loved them too. But a lot of things was to prove people wrong, or prove that I was better than, or to prove that I was as smarter than, or whatever. And so a couple of years ago, I was just like, never again am I going to do anything to prove anyone wrong. And I'm only going to do things because I love them, and then they're going to lift others up. And that's my whole come from now. Like every piece of content, book, speech, workshop, whatever it is I'm doing, sport that I'm playing, I'm still playing sports, and it's to inspire myself and to hopefully lift others up in the process with whatever it is. And I tell you what, like my stress level, my anxiety, just like frustration, resentment has just gone away.
Wow.
Now I've had to do a lot of other healing and forgiving of all sorts of stuff as well. But I think when my vision is coming from a place of lifting others up and doing things because I love it, it's just, there's no more pressure of like reaching the goal to prove people wrong. So it's been a super shift in as a human being, not just as like a man, but as a human, and for my overall joy and happiness. So some of the stuff I've been discovering. Yeah. And I think a lot of men, to go back to kind of this topic, I think a lot of men are doing things to prove their manhood or to prove that they're good enough or smart enough. Obviously, women are doing things to prove that they're smart enough and attractive enough and whatever as well. But I think that's what holds us back.
And you think that's society putting that pressure on the youth that then kind of rubs off as we get older?
Yeah, I think it starts from our childhood for sure, from our parents and siblings and friends and whatever, Instagram now and YouTube. A combination of everything, all of our experiences combined. And it's hard to get out of unless we have the support or the awareness and the willingness to move out of it. Because I lived in that way for 32 years, and it's served me well. It got me to where I was. It got me results. It got me girls. It got me money. It got me so it's this false sense of like, it got me all the things that everyone wants. But I didn't have everything in the inner world that I wanted. And it's because I was doing it for the wrong reasons.
Did you feel like you enjoyed the journey, or really just the results along the way?
I loved the journey. I've always loved the journey.
Even when it was coming from a negative perspective?
Because I came from, because I felt like I was like 8 Mile my whole life. Like I was in this mindset of like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. So for me, I kind of like craved like the journey of like, I showed you wrong, but there was like the moment of when I achieved it, it was like, oh, but that doesn't feel that good. But for like the years in between of like proving wrong, it like just kept me so hungry. I think the desire, like the pain and the suffering and the desire to like prove people wrong is like so strong. Like it's so strong to sustain. I just think like once you hit the goals, it's hard to keep going after that.
Because some people find that chip on the shoulder,
like
the
like
pure
Tom Brady.
fire.
It's like
so some people almost love that and find the joy in that.
So I think it's almost more powerful than like coming from a place of love and inspiration. But I think, it's tough.
So that's what's so impressive about your book, is you've identified all of these masks, as you call them, right? Like the fake masks that people put over themselves to be a certain way because society has taught you that this is how you should be. What are the masks that you felt like have been the most impactful in your discovery process?
I mean, I think like just researching with all these psychiatrists and psychologists about like why boys are the way boys are, why men are the way men are, and how it's all connected, and how relationships with other men are affected, how relationships with parents affected, how relationships with women affect how a man shows up. And I don't think you guys understand how powerful women are in male relationships.
Okay, so tell us, how powerful are women
I think
in
women
these relationships?
Are the most, they're extremely powerful because men do a lot of things based on like the, women giving them attention and women finding joy and happiness around their decisions or their actions or their accomplishments. And I think a lot of relationships that men and women are in, intimate relationships, men are trying to make their woman happy. It's like half the battle is just keeping them happy so you're not stressed out. Like, right, that's half the battle.
Yeah.
And it's like you want to do things that are make your woman happy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want your woman to be upset at you or sad or hurting or mad. And so your half the battle is like trying to make sure she's happy so that you're happy.
Yeah, well, that's great.
And
yes.
so there's a pressure of like having to achieve certain things or be certain things so that they are happy, in the relationship. But obviously, the woman has to be happy and find her own happiness and joy. But it's just like men do things for women. They achieve for women. They strive for women. I mean, I will speak for myself. That was like my whole life. It was like having one girl want to date me, right? It was like as a teen when you're like this ugly kid, it's like you're doing everything so that a girl will notice.
I see.
And then it's like it evolves, obviously. It's like once you have a girlfriend, it evolves or whatever. But I think it's like subconsciously, it's like a lot of the reasons why men do what they do is to attract women.
Can you read off the different masks?
So we've
and then like go deep into a few of them.
There's a few that we really feel like our listeners can really learn from. So I'm going to read off all the masks that you list and then the ones that we find really interesting. So you've got the stoic mask, the athlete mask, the material mask, the sexual mask, the aggressive mask, the joker mask, the invincible mask, the know-it-all mask, and the alpha mask.
Which one's you most interested in?
Yeah, which ones do you think?
Yeah, which one do you think?
We've got 3 here.
We've actually highlighted them. So we've chose 3 already.
Let me look at them. Oh, you already.
Oh, no, they've been highlighted.
Stoic,
I would say the Joker mask, the know-it-all mask, and the stoic.
That's so interesting. You got one right.
Only one.
And
If I saw them all in front, I might be able to choose
what's
one.
so interesting is thinking about what you think women want to, like what we really want to know versus like what we think we can really.
Maybe the sexual mask. Is
so
that one of them?
so you've got the stoic mask, right?
Mask.
Because why do men always like want to feel stoic when sometimes you want them to be vulnerable? I find that really interesting.
Yes.
Then we've got the sexual mask because I think it's such a different world, the way the men and women approach it, and then the alpha mask.
Yes. So the stoic mask
let's
is challenging because I think men, again, I had a father that was very angry growing up. So I think it all is based on the father figure to start, based on my research with psychiatrists as well. And my father was very angry a lot, very passive aggressive. So he would show like this stoic kind of anger without expressing it. And then I would see him like crying sometimes, like watching a movie or a vulnerable moment, he would cry. And I was just like, I would see the stoic person and I'd see this person who was very vulnerable. But my entire childhood, I didn't really cry or show emotion because I feel like I couldn't.
Even though you saw your dad doing it?
Even though I did, I just felt like I couldn't for some reason. But my sisters were so loving and so sensitive and expressive around me that I was like, okay, I can do this, like growing up. Later, I started to be more open and loving and vulnerable. But I think men are just conflicted. I think it's this like conflict. You say you want us to be loving and vulnerable, but then you say you want stability. So what is it that you want?
You're saying from the women
from a
say
woman's
that.
perspective, yeah. We feel like we have to be, I mean, listen, I cried all the time up until I was like 7, right? I was just like in tears every day. I think every kid is crying every day, right? I was always crying. I would cry like in my bed. I would just scream bloody murder like for my mom, right? When I was a young kid. And she would come and like sleep with me because I was like so scared or whatever it was, my fears. And then I felt like I had to grow up and be like this man where it's like you can't cry based on what I learned in sports and my lifestyle and everything like that. But again, I think it's like there's just so much conflicting messages I think men get from
the crying part. Is that something you had to learn to hold back? Are you a natural crier? Like, do you cry now?
I
or have you
do.
taught yourself to just cut that off?
No, I do cry. I don't cry that often. I think I feel deeply. And I think when it's funny, I cry in like sports movies. When I watch Rudy, I was like, I cannot stop crying at the end. Like I will cry because I feel for this guy, like the underdog that like gets his moment. And for me, it's like so moving.
Because it's so relatable to you.
Exactly. But in like, let's say my relationship, my intimate relationship, I don't really cry much. Like even when we're going through a challenge or something where she's crying, like I feel like I just need to be more calm and like supportive in there. And even though I may be feeling, I express it in another way. So it's not that I don't cry. I don't hold back tears if they're coming. I'll say that. I used to.
When you see another person cry, say your girlfriend or even another man cry, do you view them as weak?
If I see them crying all the time, I view it as let me make sure I say this the right way. I view it as they haven't learned how to understand themselves fully. And so I think they're just confused and they're crying all the time for things where they haven't like taken a hold of yet. Like they haven't had ownership on something. If it's like a constant reaction to crying, like when something happens, I feel like, okay, why are you in this? Like if it's once in a while, cool. But if it's the same thing every 2 days, if you're crying, what are you not addressing? What are you not looking at? Like what fear have you not overcome yet? Because I think there's a lot we can do to grow, or we don't need to just cry and react in every moment. I don't think there's power in that much tears. I think there's power in tears and vulnerability when you feel it. But if you're always afraid of something, then you haven't grown.
You know what's so crazy? I cry now when I'm happy. Like I cannot hold it back. There's nothing you can do. Like the other day,
cry when you're happy.
we gave one of our employees a raise, and I cried in the office. He's probably gonna listen to this, and maybe other people, but I just felt like I was so proud of what he's done and all this kind of stuff, and I just couldn't hold it back. And actually, at most of our reviews with our employees, if they do really well, I just start crying. I don't know, and at first I thought it made me weak, but really it's just that I have so much feeling, and I actually don't even know how to hold it back.
I think crying when you're happy or joyful, do it all you want.
Okay.
Personally, I think it's great because you're feeling it. I think when you're crying because you're like scared or like so emotional that you don't have like control of your feelings or anything like that, I think that it's like, okay, well, yes, if you're in like a traumatic experience, it's going to happen. If you're in like a conflict with a partner, you're probably going to cry. But I think if it happens constantly over and over again.
Over the same thing.
You can't just have you can't like stop and have like a calm conversation.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what are you hyperventilating for? Like, what's that fear that's deeper that you can't just, okay, let me take a moment. I had some tears and let me just like communicate and like express through words, not through like fear. So I think a lot of crying is from fear. Unless it's, again, something traumatic or something sad or whatever, like, of course you're going to cry, you're going to feel. But I think if you cry when you're joyful, I think that's the most beautiful way to express.
Okay, well, Lewis Howes said it, so it's all good.
I cry when I'm, when someone on my team is really, I gave someone a bonus as well, and she was, like, so moved and touched that I'm like, I don't want to cry in front of her, but I'm like, I'm welling up, It's like, oh my gosh, it's moving, you know what I mean? So I definitely relate to that. And
so when you went from like when you were younger to crying all the time to then never crying, do you think that's where anger kind of developed?
Yeah, because you got to release it somewhere.
Right.
You got to release emotion somehow.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to communicate through all my words. So I didn't know how to like just let it out through that. So I was just like, it's just like you start screaming. You're like, you just do something to get your emotion out.
Because when you're young and you're a teenager and guys are just mad for no reason or they're super angry, like I didn't get it. I didn't understand. Like, why is he so angry? Like, he's furious, like throwing stuff. Like I dated the guy.
Doesn't know how to communicate though.
Right. And so I think understanding that about men can be so useful because it can be a demonstration of pain, right? And just kind of, instead of just dismissing them as being crazy, way too much testosterone, right? There's so many things that you can dismiss guys for.
Exactly.
And I think it's really important to know like what it actually means.
And that's why all these masks, I wanted to break them down to understand why I had them all myself. Because I was like, I am not the best human being that I can be in all these areas, and I wanted to know why. Like, how can I get better? And it's been a journey, and I'm still, I write and talk about the things that I need help with the most. So this book is really like a journal for myself to learn how to grow up even more in every area of my life. And I remember thinking, okay, all those moments where I was stoic or reactive or frustrated or whatever because I didn't express myself in a comfortable way or in a way that was healing or effective, I was like, what could a woman have done in that moment? My mom, my sister, girlfriend, how could they have supported the situation?
Yeah.
Not that it's their responsibility, not that it's they have to, but if you want to have a better relationship, what part could they play?
Yeah.
Women in general.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, I need to make sure. So originally I was writing this just for men, and I was like, just for the guys that were like growing up like me. But I was like, you know what? Gosh, if women could understand this, and if they could have some like treatment on how they could ask the right question or just show up a certain way or not say anything, to disarm the mask that men wear without making them so wrong. Like, I'm not saying this happened for you, but let's just say in your relationship when your guy reacted and was so mad all the time when you were a teenager, and you maybe would say, why are you such an asshole all the time?
Yeah,
why are you so angry all the time? Well, what's wrong with you? Like, if a woman reacts that way when a mask is on for a man, it's not going to get them to take the mask off. They're going to be more defensive and say, F you, and you don't know me, and you don't know what I've been through, and this and that. It's like, whatever. They're going to...
Or you reflect it back on you. Why are you being so mean to me?
Exactly.
Right? But it's actually got nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with you. So I think I was like, what could this do to really support the women in the men's lives?
So what can a woman do?
Yeah, I think for a stoic man, if a guy is like really angry and mad and reacting because he's been so stoic and not showing emotion, and then he like acts out in this way, I think you just don't even say anything.
Okay.
You just wait for this to kind of like pass, the angry moment. You can put a hand on him, you can hug him, you can just hold him. If that's the right setting. If it's out in public, it may not make sense, but it's like allow the moment to pass without yelling at him. You yelling at him is probably not going to help. Unless you've done it before and it got him to stop, okay. But usually it's just got to take a moment for the ego to pass through.
Okay.
Just like when a kid's crying, you don't say, shut up.
Right.
It takes a moment for the kid to like feel the pain and let it pass through.
Yeah.
And eventually the guy's got to calm down for a moment. His ego's got to drop for a moment. And it all starts with acknowledgement for men. I think it's the same thing for women. It's the same thing for all of us. It all starts with acknowledgement. Acknowledging the good that you see in the man who maybe...
After they've calmed down.
After they calm down. When they can receive it, right?
Yeah.
Acknowledging the good. It may be the hardest time to acknowledge the man, right? It may be... You may want to be like, you piece of crap.
Yeah.
I can't believe you said this and did. What were you thinking? That's all the things you want to say.
Right.
But I think it's taking a moment to be, I understand you're really frustrated and angry. And there's a lot of times you hold stuff back in your emotions. But I just wanted to acknowledge you for so many good things that you do. Okay. Let me list some of these things, right? Really lifting them up. Even when you don't want to, right? Whether you're the mom, sister, aunt, girlfriend, wife, even when you're like, I'm so mad at this reaction and this little child reaction that I really don't want to acknowledge this person right now. But I think if you want to strengthen relationship, coming from a vulnerable place is going to, I believe, disarm the man in a vulnerable way. Now, this is all a dance and it's all timing and everything. And it's like, I'm not saying if you do this right away, it's going to work. Sure. It might take some time, but I just know that if I would have received that, man, it would have felt like I was much safer to share my feelings. They're like, oh, I'm not going to lose this person. I'm not going to be alone. All the fears that I have, I am good enough. Again, the only fears that I had as a kid, I'm alone. I'm going to be alone. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. All those things.
So making it a safe environment for them.
And just letting them know that they are good enough through these words. I think that is the first step. And then the second step is really making a request. So not making a demand, making a request. When we communicate openly, when you actually share with me in your ways that are frustrating you as opposed to being passive-aggressive or disconnected or stoic, it really supports our relationship. It really makes me feel so loved and taken care of. And my request is that we have more conversations like that. And if they say, well, that doesn't work for me, maybe you say, well, once every week, we just do a 10-minute check-in where you get to just share anything that you're frustrated about or hurt with or upset with. And we just express it together. And we have like time in the schedule where we make this happen. You figure out something that works for you guys, so that the man isn't so stoic and emotionless all the time or reactive all the time, whatever it may be. So first, acknowledgement. Second, request. And I think you're going to have to step into being a powerful woman in that moment, or powerful man if it's a man-man relationship in that moment to do that. But I think that's the way that the relationship grows.
And I think women a lot of the time, I think, in fact, most people, they can't help but see it from their own perspective, right?
Sure.
So, like you just said, instead of it being about you just hurt me, you really upset me, you shouldn't have said that to me. Almost sideline that and then approach it from, my ultimate goal is to build a relationship with this person. So if your ultimate goal is to build that relationship, act accordingly, right?
Yeah. And listen,
That's
I'm not
powerful.
a psychiatrist, and I'm not trained in this in any way.
But I don't
just
think
know
you
from my
need to
personal,
be. Like, I think from your personal experience.
Personal experience of what's helped me heal and move beyond it, and through all my research with these experts, these are some of the things that we've, seen get results. So
that's incredible.
So the Stoic Mask, the sexual what was the next one?
Yeah,
the sexual
mask.
mask. What's the question around that?
What is it, and then how do you disarm it?
I think the sexual mask is the man that is driven by sleeping with the most women possible, the man that's driven to just get the girl constantly, to prove his manhood, that he's masculine enough.
Okay.
Like the more women I sleep with, the more women I get numbers from, or the more women that desire and want me, the more masculine of a man that I am, the more worthy of a man that I am. And I think this is really hard because this is something I struggle with all the time. When I'm single, it's really challenging because it's just like, I think a lot of it is just like in your biology as a man to just be like driven and wired certain ways, at least for me.
So challenging in terms of challenging to get women, or challenging in another way?
Challenging to not wear the sexual mask.
I see.
Because I speak for myself. I have, I feel like I'm very sexually driven. And when I'm single, that can be like, I have to contain myself to not be like, put on this sexual mask and just be like, oh, all these opportunities. Let me go after everything and just keep going. It's like.
What makes you not want to wear that mask? Like, what is the.
Because it's not fulfilling.
Okay.
Like, I think men think it will be fulfilling the more women they date or sleep with or whatever, make out with or whatever. It's going to be like more fulfilling because you're proving your manhood. But it's not.
It's just a pride and ego thing.
Pride, ego, false sense of masculinity.
But at the end of the day,
it's not fulfilling.
We just want to find love,
That's
right?
it.
Is that what
and
you want?
You don't find those connections. You don't find that intimacy if you're constantly chasing or constantly hooking up with multiple women all the time. You're just not going to find that. But you feel like that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Okay, so if there's a single woman out there, how can you tell if a man is wearing his sexual mask, and should you steer clear?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think he was trying to have sex with you right away.
If he asked you back to his pad the first night.
I think women need to just be really discerning. And listen, it's like it all depends on what the woman wants too. Maybe you just want to have fun and hook up.
And some women do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think it's just like you need to get clear on your vision as a woman. Is my vision to date a bunch of guys right now? Cool, I'm going to date a bunch of guys and maybe I have fun and whatever happens, happens. If my vision is to find someone to build a relationship with, then I'm clear in my intention. I'm clear in my communication with men so that there's no lack of understanding. I'm clear. So if we're not clear, you're going to get unclear results. Yeah. And you're going to get miscommunication in return. And then you're going to get upset at the guy or upset at yourself. That's when women get to step in being vulnerable and being like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be saying this on the first couple of days I meet this person, but really you should.
Yeah.
Who cares if you scare the guy away? Like,
then it wasn't the right guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like open up in a way that works for you. And you've got to play the game a little, whatever. I get it. It's like the first few dates or something, but you got to be so clear on your vision of what you want.
So what do you think about guys who put on the sexual mask and they're seen as a stud or whatever because they can get so many numbers and sleep with so many women, but women who want to put on their sexual mask for whatever reason are called sluts and whores? Like, what do you think about that? And
that's not the person that you marry, it's the person you have fun with.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
What do I think about that opinion or that viewpoint? Do I think it's...
That viewpoint is very real, so what do you think about it?
Sure. I think it just is what it is. It's just where we're at in society. Do I think it's right? No, because it's just where it is. Women are viewed this way.
But do you judge women for how many
people they've slept with? I think the ego always judges.
Interesting. Why? Why ego?
Because the ego is what gets hurt the most. And so let's just say I dated a girl and I started dating a girl and I found out she slept with a certain amount of guys.
Right. A high number.
Yeah, high number.
Right.
My ego's going to be like, ouch, that hurts.
Really? Why?
At least my ego would have.
But why does that hurt? If it was before you, it's not like she
think-
cheated on you.
I don't know. I think it's just like
I'm just
you're
one of
possessive.
many.
An ego is like a possession. It's like ownership. It's all these things, as opposed to coming from a place of love. It's an understanding is, okay, this is this person's life, where they're at today. And I'm meeting them at a certain time, and I get to accept her for who she is, and hopefully she accepts me for who I am. And we get to create something powerful, meaningful together moving forward. But I never was emotionally, I guess, mature enough or available enough or aware enough to not have that ego hold me back for a long time. So now I'm much more just flexible and open-minded and understanding, because I've been with a lot of women, you know, and it's like I can't have someone I'm dating can't be upset about me, about my past. It's just like where I've been. So you would hope that she would be accepting of me and I'd be accepting of her. But I think our ego as men sometimes get in the way.
Yeah.
Women too. Ego gets in the way too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So again, it's just a society thing that is what it is. It sucks. I mean, women are judged for things, men are judged for things.
100%.
Yeah, and I think it's just the more we talk about it, then the
Yeah.
more normal it becomes.
Exactly.
And the whole society has to change, and the people who think that way have to die off or change the mentality, or else that mentality is going to be there.
I feel, but also guys are called as players. You know, it's like guys have the rap as players if you're hooking up with a lot of girls.
That's not really a bad thing.
I was going to
It's a bad
say,
thing. It's a woman. It's a bad thing.
Right, it's a bad thing for a woman, but not for a man.
No, but it's a bad thing if you're a guy and you want to be with a girl, but all her girlfriends are saying he's a player.
But you know what?
Then you got a bad rep.
But
you created that rep.
Right. But it's the same thing as girls hooking up with a lot of guys.
But I think the word player,
But it's
though,
different.
even though we
It's
say it as
different.
negative,
There's a power in that
there is a bit
word.
of stud to it.
Yeah, there's a power in that word, but
For
being called
guys.
as for
I
guys.
don't know.
But
I'm
not
going
for
to be
women.
honest, for women as
Really?
well. Yeah.
Women
If
like a
you're-
player.
If you're a player, it means that other women want you. And so from a woman's perspective, it's like, oh, he's desirable by a lot of women. What am I missing?
Wow,
And
interesting.
maybe if the woman can change the player, then she becomes
Then
the
I'm
winner.
the one. That's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost
Interesting.
like a challenge. Like I can tame the player.
But then do guys ever
But again, it
think,
goes back to ego.
Yeah.
It does
Pure
go back.
ego.
It goes
It's
back
like-
to ego for both people.
For both people, yeah. So it's a
Can't tame me.
It's a beautiful. It's like a beautiful dance.
Yeah.
That's actually really interesting.
I mean, listen, this is all stuff that I still have not yet mastered.
Right.
It's stuff I'm still like
We're
learning and growing.
always
and, like,
learning. Yeah.
And here's the thing: all these masks that I've like, you know, I give examples for like each mask and how I've like failed as a man and a human. The way I look like I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm gonna continue to make a lot of mistakes. I think we all are, but I realize like I'm so much more aware when I'm triggered, when I'm reactive, and putting on one of these masks. Whether it's like if I'm single and I'm like I need to chase more girls, and I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm so much quicker to be aware of the mask and take it off. If I'm being stoic and not showing emotion, if I'm being driven to make more money just for like the game of making more money because I'm going to be richer than people, like I'm quick to be like, I don't want to make that decision in my business. That doesn't feel good. Let me take a moment, reconnect to my vision of why I'm doing this, and move forward. And so for me, I still wear these masks. All of them.
But you realize
But
it
you use them
when
to
it happens.
But I'm
identify
so
the
much quicker.
behavior.
Yes, I'm so much quicker to realize it, be aware of it, understand it, and be like, it's not going to serve me in the long run. So let me take off the mask and come back to a place of love, a place of connection, a place of win-win in every situation, as opposed to I need to be right, they need to be wrong, I need to be the best, they need to be second, which is what the ego wants, and which was what my whole life was growing up.
Yeah.
So I need to be right, and everyone else in every relationship needs to be wrong. I need to win. That means someone has to lose, and that's not that's not fun at all. Living in that space as a man or a woman or any human, gender neutral, it's not fun, and that's what I started realizing. Like, just my life wasn't fulfilling, even though I was achieving so many things that I wanted. And so that's why this discovery of like dropping the mask has really served me in a bigger way of inner fulfillment now that I've been achieving things on the outer fulfillment
With the right
spectrum.
intention.
Yeah, with the right intention.
What was the last mask?
And the last one was the alpha mask.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Oh, I mean, this is all about like being right and winning and having like dominance and all these things. And I think it's just, again,
it's the ego again, huh?
It's the ego. Everything comes back to ego.
It's all the ego problem.
It's all ego.
No, really, like when people get into arguments, it's the ego that keeps the argument going. If someone would just back down and try to understand, we'd be done. Yeah, it's all ego.
And we just wear a different type of ego, right? So for me, I think it's here's the challenge, because all these masks also support us in getting to a certain place.
Right.
I think there's a time and a place to wear the mask. Like there's a time and a place to be wear the alpha mask in certain situations, to step up and to be like, no, you're wrong, this is right, we need to go now. You know, it's like we can't just be like, oh, kumbaya all day long. So there's like everything's a dance. And that's the hardest part. It's not just like never wear these masks and everything's going to be beautiful and like rainbows. No, like we've got to be able to step into certain things. We've got to be flexible. We've got to be understanding of people and human beings' feelings within every situation. I think the true definition of a man is being in service to lift everyone up and humanity up and the world up. And in order to do that, a man must be willing to learn so much about himself, must be willing to let go of his ego in the biggest way, must master so many skills over time to be able to understand every type of human being. Man, woman, gender neutral, young, old, must have so much experience in order to lift every situation up. And I think that's the true journey of every man, is to try to be in the biggest amount of service possible. And what would the world be like if every man came from a place of love and service? And, you know, I feel like women already have this quality that's innate in most women.
In most women.
And they want to come from that place. I feel like that's kind of the feminine quality in general, right? And I think, what would the world look like if men were more open and willing to serve? I think it'd be a very powerful experience.
Hopefully we would have less wars. I don't know. I think that's a big thing to say.
No,
but
yeah. I mean, the ego is...
It's ego. I mean, doesn't it come from kings or whoever wanting to take land from ownership, own things, showing that you're powerful?
Ownership with women. It's the ego with the alpha and the sexual mask. Is like you want to own the women. You want to own them. You want to be right. That means someone else has to be wrong. You want to win. That means some other country has to lose. And when we can, again, come from a place of service and win-win, and let's all move forward together, as opposed to I'm going to be at the top of the mountain, you're going to be at the bottom, then there's a lot more inner fulfillment as well as outer fulfillment. And I think that's been the journey for me, is like, I'm not trying to start any wars and never try to do anything really bad, but it's like, I try to beat guys out sometimes. I try to fight with guys one-on-one. I try to like say things that just don't make sense. And even though I was achieving, it was at like, what's the price that I was paying? You know, I think there's a lot of men in the world right now that are paying a heavy price to succeed and win and drive countries forward. They're paying a heavy price internally, whether they're showing it or not. They're feeling it, and that's the scary thing. So for me, this is really a journey, again, and wanting men to open up and see how they can become better, and also how women can become better. And you know, and I've been mentioned a couple of times gender neutral, gender fluid, because for me,
gender fluid.
Yeah, gender fluid.
Yeah,
it's like going back and forth from male to female. Yeah, I have a family member who is they, who is a they.
I know someone who is a they as well.
Who is, does not associate with the pronouns he or she.
Wow.
And I'm still learning so much about this myself.
Right.
They told me about a year ago, and our family about a year ago, that they are not a female, and they...
What were they born as?
Female.
Okay.
Yes. And so for me, it's just like a whole nother discovery. Like, you know, we interviewed, for this book, I interviewed a born female that is now male and competes in male sports.
Wow.
At a national level.
Wow.
Yes. I interviewed drag queens, and I was just like, I want to learn about masculinity from everyone. What is masculinity from all genders, races? Like, I don't care, for me. You know, there's so much more for me to learn and discover about what is masculinity in general from any gender. And I'm still learning about so much, but I think from a man's perspective and a woman's perspective, that's what I've been trying to do.
What do you think the need is to put someone in a bucket and give them a label? Like, is it just comfort to say she, he, even saying they is putting them again in a category?
Yeah.
What do you think that is? The need to do that?
Good question. I don't know. Identity, community.
Yeah,
Identity,
feeling like you belong somewhere.
Yeah. Understanding, relatability. Yeah.
Because I think we fight so, like, when we're younger, we fight so much to be, to fit in. But then as we grow older, we actually fight to be recognized.
This is
stand
so
out.
true.
I know, right?
This is so true. You want to be just like everyone else in school when you grow up. What makes me different? What makes me unique? And I think the earlier we can realize that, the happier we can all really be.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, now from a man's perspective, can you let us know what you think is the most attractive quality about a woman? If you're in a male-female relationship, or not even.
Well, I mean, I'm putting natural looks aside. So quality-wise, I would say owning who she is, being in complete like ownership and confidence and belief in who she is. When a woman, in my mind, I'm speaking for myself, doesn't believe in herself, then that's not attractive. So it's kind of like this level of belief. It's not a cockiness. It's just a level of comfort and belief that she is comfortable with who she is.
I think that's
What's yours most for men?
For men?
For a guy, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. I think the most attractive thing about a man is his confidence in his skill, whatever it is, but then also being able to compliment me and notice something that I'm doing at the same time. So it's that.
Yeah.
It's
I think it's different for each person.
I was going to say confidence, 100%.
I think confidence is so sexy.
Because
it's so sexy.
And I think going off what you said, right, confidence that they can point out something in you that if it's something that, let's say, they're weak at, but they can still point and go, oh my God, this is so good, right? The confidence to own other people's strengths as well, or like point out other people's strengths, because it may highlight their weakness, but they're so confident in themselves that highlighting their weaknesses, it doesn't bother them.
Yeah. That's why I think it's powerful to acknowledge the men in your life for the good that they do even when there's things that you know they could be doing better. Starting out by acknowledging. And then I think it's going to support them and opening up in general.
I think the acknowledging is so important because in my relationship with Sam, I'm actually the one who goes super stoic and quiet when I'm super angry that I just won't talk.
Like passive
maybe I'll
aggressive,
and then maybe like one tear will drop down my cheek and I'll just stare at him and like and he'll be
I know.
And then he'll be like
the intensity in this room.
He'll be like, Cassey, what's wrong? Like, let's talk about it. And I'll be like, there's nothing wrong. You know, like that sort of thing.
Gosh.
And then Sam actually was the one who taught me how
what's
to
the
open
mask
up.
That you're wearing?
Well, I think that'd be the stoic mask, right? And Sam would actually be the one to hug me and be like, hey, let's talk about this. It's okay. It's okay. So he actually knew exactly what to do. So he's the one who's made me more of an emotional person in terms of opening up when I'm angry. So he's been good at that. So I try to do that with him when he's angry, but I know that when he gets angry, I just get angry at him and I just like don't say anything, just let him be, and I just like go away, which is not good. So I need to work on
Lewis
that.
House is not a good strategy.
Yeah.
We all work in different ways.
We all work in different ways.
You may need some space and time, and that's fine.
But I think this has been so useful. So even though I know we all have our small little different nuances, like that advice that you've given women out there, or even guys that are listening, like it's so powerful. And I think like we can all really like make that extra step to really think about the other person, your other partner, and
and I think to kind of wrap up the how you can best support the man situation is like, again, first acknowledging the good and making requests. But however, if like the pattern continues over and over and over again, you're gonna be like, Lewis, this didn't work. Like he's still reactive or angry or stoic or whatever. He's still doing these things. You know, I think when you make the request, you need to ask them at the end, do you honor my request? So do you honor that? Here's my request of you. My request is that when you get upset or when you get defensive or when you just look at me with one single tear of rage, that, you know, that you write down the things you're most frustrated about. If you can't communicate to me, you write it down and you hand it to me. And we start there. That's my request. Do you honor that request? In a loving way, non-combative way. and say, just as an example here, but
Yeah.
see if they honor the request. And if they say yes, then you say, okay, you've made a commitment. We've made a commitment together in doing this. So if someone breaks that commitment in the future, you say, we made a commitment and you've broken this commitment. So here's my request again. And if it continues the pattern, then you say, listen, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Like you've honored the request, you've made the commitment.
Right.
And it's just being able to communicate that way, I think, in a language that works for people and where they're both on the same page.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be difficult if someone you're trying your hardest, you're really making an effort, and then someone's just ignoring it, right?
Right.
I think, I mean, and then you have to make a decision on the relationship at one point, you know, how much investment, how much time, if it works for you, if it doesn't, or how you're going to evolve it. So
at the end of the day, be open, communicate, and act with the right intention. Louis, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. And
where can people find you?
Yeah, where can people find you, and where can they get your book?
Louis Howe is anywhere online, and The Mask of Masculinity on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, maskofmasculinity.com.
And comes out?
October 31st.
Halloween. On Halloween. Mask. Oh my gosh.
We take off the mask on Halloween. We're doing a Halloween party where you come as yourself.
This is good. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Louis. And at the end of every episode, we tell everyone to be Sheroic in unison. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget, be Sheroic.